Freddy vs. Jason is like a pile of golden pancakes drowning in maple syrup. When you first dig in, there's really nothing better. But once you slog through the soggy center, it's almost impossible to get to the end with a smile on your face. I may have just made myself a million enemies, but I can't lie and say I think Freddy vs. Jason is a great film. I'm a die-hard horror fan, so I love it for what it is, but the dreamer in me can't help but wonder what Freddy vs. Jason would have been in the hands of the right filmmakers. With visionary directors like Guillermo del Toro and Peter Jackson considered, as well as special effects maestro Rob Bottin, I'm still at a loss for words at the choice they finally made. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think Ronnie Yu's a bad director. Even he admitted to having no real interest in the Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, so why trust this guy to helm such a savagely anticipated mashup of the two? It really makes no sense. Del Toro and Jackson would have made something far more respectful, and although their versions of Freddy vs. Jason will only ever exist in spirit, I'm gonna try and map out a story with some of their sensibilities as inspiration. There really isn't a ton I'd keep when it comes to the final Freddy vs. Jason product we received back in 2003. Of course, Robert Englund should stay on as Freddy, but other than that, I don't really see the need to salvage much else. When it comes to the actor behind the hockey mask, I'd rather Ken Kersinger sit this one out. I'm not a huge Kane Hodder glazer or anything like that, but I do think that the guy deserves a toe-to-toe bout with Robert Englund. The majority of my issues with Freddy vs. Jason really stem from the overall story, which not only dooms the film, but it also does its best to bastardize the very elements that made fans love the characters in the first place. I think we need to completely rewrite Freddy vs. Jason in order to fix it. Now obviously this is just for fun. By now the film is more than 20 years old, and those involved in its production have been paid in full. My version of Freddy vs. Jason would start with a wide shot of a frightened girl staring toward the camera. The classic Nightmare on Elm Street score begins to play. The camera tracks behind the girl to reveal what she's staring at: Nancy Thompson's house. She tiptoes, carefully peeking around each corner. She moves to the second floor and sees a door at the end of the dark hallway with light peeking from the bottom. She approaches the door but hesitates, and the girl thinks she hears children whispering on the other side. She slowly opens the door and inches into the light. She's shocked to see the room is her own bedroom. What the fuck? Behind her is the same rickety stairwell to the first floor. We hear a large creak scream from down below. A voice begins to growl and gurgle, indistinct at first. The voice repeats the same phrase over and over in a broken mantra, almost gasping the words out as if it has no lungs.
Sleep like a rock, sleep like a rock.
Then another voice, this one a bit higher pitched.
Sleep like a log, sleep like a log.
Then a third voice comes in.
Don't wake a sleeping dog, don't wake a sleeping dog.
The girl is now so scared she can't move. She has the worst case of dreamer's knees imaginable. 3 undead humanoid ghouls are crawling up the stairs, slithering and squirming over each other as they chant. Their heads and necks are twisted and bent, looking anything but human. Suddenly they sprint toward the girl, giggling like hyenas. She quickly careens into her bedroom, slamming what is now her closet door just as the first ghoul reaches the threshold. She braces against the wooden door and fights back as it pulses from the force on the other side. The door gives way, and the girl scrambles to the other side of the room. The 3 ghouls slither and slunk inside and descend upon the girl. Freddy's silhouette glides into the open door. As he walks towards the girl, he begins to cackle that witchy twang we all know and love.
Don't worry, Danny.
She shrieks and flails around, but the ghouls hold her tight.
No use in trying to escape. My pets won't allow it. You do recognize your friends. Well, they're my friends now, Danny. And there's special perks for being my friend. I can make you strong. I can make you young forever.
Freddy slowly rears his hand back to strike.
It's time for you to come with me, Danny.
And the girl begins to kick and scream and knocks loose a bucket on her headboard that tips forward and douses her with ice-cold water. Danny, our main protagonist, jolts awake, gasping for dear life.
What the fuck?
Smash cut to a rich guy in his office, slamming down his desk phone. He recollects himself, picks up the phone again, and dials out. The other line picks up, and it's his wife. He tells her there's a problem at the camp. He has to go out and take a look. No, honey, I'm not gonna fire him. He's your brother. That means he's my family too. We'll call this rich dude Gus. He's the new owner of Camp Crystal Lake. He's entrusted his dumbass brother-in-law Chet to head the reno project and also manage the camp upon its grand opening. Gus arrives and searches for Chet. Once they finally cross paths, Gus pulls him aside for a private conversation. Gus is upset that the project is running behind. One of the new buildings, a large rec center, is still only half done, with campers due to show up in 3 days. Chet admits it straight away. He says he's sorry and that he has a whole new idea that's going to make them a ton of cash. Gus gets even more irritated. He thought Chet called him here for an emergency, not a business proposition. Chet leads them to one of the freshly fabricated camp storage sheds. They go into the concrete basement. 3 male counselors in their early 20s are waiting in a far corner. Standing behind them is the hulking corpse of Jason Voorhees, petrified in clay and in lake mud. Son of a bitch, I'm ruined. Don't worry, this handsome devil right here is our new meal ticket. It's not just any old body, it's Jason Voorhees. Gus reminds Chet that Jason Voorhees is nothing but an urban legend. Chet doesn't give in. He's convinced that they can turn the body into a sideshow attraction and the rest of the camp into a murder museum. Gus isn't having it. He's gonna go and come back in a couple of days with the right kind of plan to remove the body without causing a scene. Until then, tell nobody else. But Chet, of course, has already broken that rule. He was so certain that this was a sure thing and that Gus would go along with it that he called his friend immediately to come and check it out. He makes another phone call to try to shut it all down, but his buddy Rick is just around the corner. It really is Jason. How'd you find him? Dragging the lake. He was buried down in the mud. Rick whips out a flashlight and starts to examine the corpse. Decades beneath the water has left the body looking soggy and unevenly bloated. The decayed face is fully exposed with nearly half the bottom jaw gone and only a few teeth in the top still clinging for dear life. Chet is a bit discouraged and starting to doubt it all. Rick is 100% certain. He pulls out a bunch of memorabilia. This guy is a Jason fanatic. He then pulls out a scratched up, yellowish stained hockey mask similar to Part 8. Now this is an original, but it's a lot like the one he would have worn. Rick suggests that they get the body out tonight. Just help me get him to my truck. You can call Gus and tell him you took care of it. Since Chet would be the hero of this story, he likes the idea. Rick is parked a safe distance outside the camp in an empty plot. What the fuck is this? Rick has multiple car batteries rigged to his truck. So what, you're just gonna rev him up with car batteries and Frankenstein his ass? Pretty much, yeah. Rick is insane, but he's equally as confident. Chet isn't sure which one to be more afraid of. Remember, you thought he was Jason too, or else you wouldn't have called me. I've been waiting most of my life for this. I might be the only one left who really believed he was out here somewhere. Chet's broken now. He knows this is Rick's childhood fantasy come true, so he keeps watch as Rick goes full Victor Frankenstein. Rick hooks the corpse up to the contraption and revs the engine. He gives it hell and surges the entire setup. At first nothing really happens, only a bunch of smoke rolling off the corpse. Then some of the mud falls away and the lone remaining eye quickly rips open. Holy shit, it's him! He's really alive! If he's alive, then we're fucked! Rick never thought it would work, and now he realizes he's resurrected the most brutal mass murderer in all of history. Jason almost immediately starts to bust out of the brittle mud tomb. The dudes are frozen in their tracks as Jason wobbles free, his knees weak like a baby deer. The young counselors start to cackle at the sight. Then the three of them sort of gang up on Jason, mimicking him and talking to him like a toddler. He ambles forward, but when he reaches the counselors, he touches the first guy's arms and BAM! His otherworldly strength returns. He rips the dude's arms clean off like a Thanksgiving wishbone. Jason then grabs one of the two remaining counselors and uses him as a weapon to beat the other one to death. Chet snaps out of it and grabs a shovel from the back of Rick's truck. He lunges at Jason with it, but the hulking demon disarms him with ease. Now Jason has a shovel in hand. He and the two remaining bros just stare at each other like a twisted version of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Rick bolts to his truck, but of course it won't start. Looks like the dumbass fried the battery. Jason charges at Chet and takes out his legs with the shovel like a true hockey goon. He then plunges the sharp end down into Chet's face and pins him to the ground. Rick scrambles out of the truck, and since he's not too intelligent, he digs into his bag and pulls out the replica machete. The yellowed hockey mask falls out onto the ground. Rick swings the machete, but Jason catches his arm, snaps it, and snatches him up by the neck like a duckling. Rick is in agony as Jason patiently looks around. After seemingly growing tired of Rick's wailing, he throws him on the ground and stomps on his head. Jason then of course finds the stained mask and puts it on. He disappears into the woods, and we fade to black. Now, I've never really been a huge fan of Freddy manipulating Jason like they did in the real film. I think that undermines Jason's animalistic nature and almost makes him infantile. Now, I know the Ronnie Yu film set out to make Jason into a sort of anti-hero, but in my opinion that was a massive misstep. Jason isn't a good guy. I know they don't necessarily make him Wolverine or anything like that, but when Freddy vs. Jason came along, Jason had 9 films under his belt and absolutely 0 redeeming qualities in any of them. In this version of Freddy vs. Jason, nobody's pulling this guy's strings. You ever see a great white shark with a leash and a collar? Yeah, me neither. To get these horror giants to cross paths, you don't need some convoluted web of crap between them. Just bring their victims together. Make them bob for apples in the same bucket. Now, how do we do that exactly? Well, do you remember the girl from before, Danny? Well, we'll cut back to her. She's in her room talking to a boy her age, a sort of Glenn and Nancy type thing. She explains to him that her parents are sending her to summer camp. They think that there's a killer on the loose that's preying on teenagers, so shipping her out is their best attempt at keeping her safe. Throughout their conversation, we realize realize that the 3 ghouls we saw earlier on in her nightmare were actually friends of hers that were killed by Freddy. Danny tells Glenn 2.0 her friend Mark is going along. He's being haunted by Freddy Krueger too. Glenn 2.0 is initially a little jealous. Danny reassures him that he doesn't have anything to worry about Mark. Cut to Mark waiting on a bus and staring at some male construction workers out the open window. Now, Mark is obviously an homage to the great Mark Patton, star of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Danny steps onto the bus, which will eventually take Mark, and all these other kids to camp. Mark and Danny 100% believe that Freddy is real. They don't expect to escape Freddy just because they left Elm Street. So they arrive at the camp, and at this point, Gus has returned and has no explanation for where Chet and the other counselors went. So he's been forcing the nervous staff to keep quiet and carry on. That night, as they're getting settled in, Danny and Mark get separated because the boys can't sleep in the girls' bunk. She tries desperately to stay awake. Eventually, she gets up and sneaks outside to get some fresh air. Freddy steps out of the dark and looks around the camp like a tourist fresh off a vacation plane ride. Freddy taunts Danny, mocks her parents' stupidity. He then goes on to thank Danny for showing him a buffet of new souls. He offers to kill her quickly as a thank you. Danny takes off running, and in her bed she's tossing and turning like crazy. This stirs some of the other campers sleeping around her. Freddy is hot on her tail in the dream. He eventually corners Danny. She's not cowering like a wimp, but she knows she's in deep shit. Freddy is ready to take the final swipe. Before he can kill her, one of Danny's bunkmates shakes her awake. When she opens her eyes, she's surrounded by a dozen or more girls who look just as scared as she is. Cut to outside by the lake beneath the moonlight. 2 counselors, a man and a woman, walk hand in hand talking on the beach. He has a candlelight picnic set up for them. They eat and everything is super romantic. Then the man whips out a bottle of vodka and pours both of them a shot. They take the shots in unison, and then suddenly Jason storms into frame, kicks the man square in the chest. The vodka pours all over him as he falls backward. Jason quickly grabs the screaming woman and breaks her back over his knee. Jason picks up one of the candles and tosses it onto the man, engulfing him in flames. He frantically ambles to the lake and jumps in. He's burned horribly now, but somehow still alive. He swims to shore and lies on his chest, trying not to swallow any sand as he gasps for air. Just as the man gets a grip on his breathing, he turns upward and sees Jason Voorhees holding a large rock. Jason plunges the rock down, and we cut to black. Now we know Jason and Freddy are present at the camp in their own respective ways. The camp is incredibly disorganized. Gus isn't sure they can make it work for the entire summer. Counselors keep disappearing, and Chet is still nowhere to be found. Cut to Danny walking over to a garden shed on the camp property. Coast is clear, so she goes in. Sleeping on a rolled up tarp is Mark. She wakes him and takes his place. No longer than 30 minutes this time. I think we're pressing our luck. Mark claims he hasn't dreamt of Freddy in almost a week. Maybe he's gone. Danny doesn't believe it. Mark leaves her alone to take a power nap, and as he makes his way across the camp, he notices a guy looking almost as if he's asleep on his feet. Mark carefully approaches him and asks if he's okay. We'll call this guy Pete. He isn't very polite. He tells Mark that he hasn't been sleeping well, but that's none of Mark's business. Pete gets very defensive and tells him to scram before he kicks his ass. Mark listens and leaves, but we stay with Pete. As he makes his way across the camp, he's a dick to everyone he interacts with. Pete eventually makes it to his cabin and kicks out the 2 guys chilling inside so he can try to take a nap. He dozes off, and we drift into a dream right along with him. He's back at home in his own bed. He reaches into his nightstand and pulls out a half-burned cigarette and lighter. Kicks back, lights it, and gets comfy on his soft bed. In comes his beautiful mother, all dolled up like Mrs. Cleaver. She's carrying a tray with lunch and a nice cold drink. She brushes some rubble off of Pete's dresser and places the tray right there. Pete looks at her like he's seen a ghost. Mom?
It's me, honey. Now quit messing around and eat your lunch.
Pete pushes past the absurdity. His mother's dead, after all. We see her obituary framed on the wall behind him. Nevertheless, he grabs a bowl of soup off the tray and goes to town. Cheesy potato, his absolute favorite. It's salty, savory, the texture changes abruptly. Pete tries to swallow, but something is now stuck in his throat. He drops the bowl and the spoon on the ground and begins to hack and gag. He digs in his mouth and finds a string of dark hair. Pete pulls on it, unraveling more and more like a rope from his throat. Eventually, the hair gets stuck. A hand jolts out and grabs the hair, pulling it tight like a dog's leash.
Don't worry, Pete. Growing boys sprout hair in unfamiliar places.
Freddy then wraps the hair around Pete's neck and strangles him. Back in the cabin, Pete is hanging from the rafters. Word spreads across the camp like wildfire, but Gus does his best to keep things quiet and block any info from getting to the outside world. Mark and Danny aren't taking any chances. They agree they have to try something or else everyone at camp is fucked. Cut to a group of mid to late 20-somethings sitting around a fire among a small village of tents. They're off in the forest a mile and a half or so away from Camp Crystal Lake. They're drinking and minding their own business. We see a POV shot peeking at them from the woods. One of the campers whips out a guitar just as another pulls out a fat bag of weed. The POV moves to their blind side inside and approaches using their tents as cover. It looks around the tent and watches as the dude sparks up. He takes the first puff and the POV springs forward and shocks the group into a collective scream, and it's a forest ranger.
Last I checked, marijuana is illegal in this state. Right, Ranger Gerald?
Another ranger pops out and scares the group a second time.
I do believe that's right, Ranger Randy.
Ranger Gerald essentially suggests they'll let it all go if the group just gives them the big bag of weed. The group urge their friend to give up the bud, but he buries his feet in the mud and says hell no. He says he'll twist them both a joint each, and that's his final offer. The rangers agree and stand in awkward silence as the dude fulfills his side of the bargain. The rangers return to their cabin just in time to avoid the rain. They sit in the cabin with their feet up, smoking and laughing like a couple of degenerates. The storm causes the power to go out, and the two of them play rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets to start the generator. Ranger Gerald loses and swings on his giant trench coat. He flicks on his mag light, dips out into the rain. He gets the generator running and takes his sweet time doing it. Ranger Gerald returns to the cabin, and as he gets inside and starts to remove his coat, he's frozen by what he sees before him. It's Jason standing next to Ranger Randy in the process of ripping his head clean off. Ranger Gerald sprints out the door, dropping his coat behind him. Jason grabs a letter opener off the desk and starts after Gerald. He stops for just a moment, picks up the trench coat, examines it a little bit, then quickly puts it on before continuing his pursuit. Gerald puts some distance between him and Jason and at one point stops to catch his breath. He sees Jason in the distance, power walking towards him. Jason's moving fast, so Gerald picks up again, only to be halted by a patch of thick mud. The more he wiggles to get out, the deeper his legs sink into the slop. Just as Gerald pulls himself out of the mud, Jason winds up like Randy Johnson and buries the letter opener deep into the middle of Ranger Gerald's back. He doubles over, screaming in agony. Jason reaches him and drags him back into the mud, then yanks the letter opener from Gerald's back and proceeds to stick him with it again and again and again and again until all that's left is a lifeless mound soaked with bloody mud and rainwater. From here, Jason stands up and begins the trek back towards the group that the Rangers just busted. He spies on all of them for a few seconds, then spots a pile of firewood off to the side of their camp. He approaches the wood, finds a large log splitter in place of the traditional axe. In almost an instant, a large log flies through the air and smashes into one of the partiers, killing them instantly. Jason then immediately kills another partygoer from above using the log splitter. He massacres the entire shell-shocked group, dispatching the final one by throwing him into the fire and holding him down with his foot. Jason notices a buck knife in a sheath on the side of one of the victims. He grabs it and then puts the knife into his coat to use later on. Gus is essentially holding the entire camp hostage at this point. He has one of the senior counselors address the campers and lie about all the recent disappearances, saying no actual deaths have occurred, just injuries, and that said campers have been sent to the hospital and then to recover at home. Danny and Mark know they're bullshitting, but at this point they're confused. It's been a few days since either of them has dreamed. Danny has been sleeping with a foldable knife in her pocket, married to the idea that if she dreams, she'll take the knife in too. Mark isn't so sure, but since he doesn't have a better plan in mind, he decides to sleep with a taser in one pocket and a corkscrew stolen from the camp cafeteria in the other. That evening, they go to dinner at the cafeteria and notice a girl camped out at the coffee pots. Danny and Mark approach her and find out her name is May. Now, we'll see this girl throughout the story from time to time, but it isn't until now that we finally get to know her a bit. She tells Danny and Mark that she hasn't been herself lately. Mark suggests that she go get some rest, but May says she doesn't want to go to sleep. Mark flat out asks her about Freddy Krueger. All May can do is nod. Danny tells May that Freddy's trying to kill them too, and that's when May reveals something a bit unusual. She says Freddy isn't trying to kill her, he just talks to her, and he won't leave her alone. May tells them about how Freddy encourages her to share his story with people, to everyone she can possibly reach. Then he says to count their faces like she's counting sheep and drift into a dream as if they're right there beside her. At that moment, Danny realizes what Freddy is trying to do. Danny can only surmise that certain people have the ability to pull others into their dreams. Freddy must be able to recognize this type of power in people even if they can't see it themselves. As May stands there looking confused, Mark and Danny sew a plan together. May will pull the two of them into her dream, they'll get the drop on Freddy, and if their weapons theory works, they'll hit him with a brutal sneak attack and end it once and for all. May is weirded out but agrees to cooperate after Mark and Danny explain to her how Freddy killed their friends and all of the other missing campers. That night, she dreams of a stroll through camp. At first, she doesn't think she's dreaming. Every person she passes is friendly and upbeat. Now all of the friendly people are frozen in their tracks, turned toward May with their eyes and mouths gaped open like Ghostface. She wastes no time and dips back to her cabin. She barricades the door, and when she turns around, Freddy's right there grinning. May confronts Freddy, telling him she knows he needs her to lure in some more victims. All of a sudden, Mark and Danny appear in May's dream. Freddy is pissed to see them. Danny's hand immediately shoots to her pocket, the same with Mark. It's a success. They were able to get the weapons into the dream. Freddy sees this and bursts their bubble with a massive evil cackle.
You can't kill me here. This is my world, you little bitch. bitches.
May pipes up and threatens Freddy. She claims if he tries to hurt them, she won't bring him any more victims.
You really shouldn't have listened to these brats.
He closes the distance between he and May in a fraction of a second and uppercuts his claws into her gut, lifting her straight up.
I've only known a handful of humans with dream abilities, and trust me, babe, it ain't you.
Freddy then turns to Danny and Mark.
I don't need some snot-nosed kid to conjure meat for me. I'm a virus. As long as my story is told somewhere, as long as children whisper my name, I'll be right here.
Mark and Danny might be packing weapons, but at this point they're shitting bricks.
Enough about me. What about May here? I'm sure you're wondering how we're still in her dream. Well, the brain doesn't die when the heart stops. I'd say we have about 6 minutes left.
Now, we're sort of stealing that line from the 2010 remake, but that movie's trash, so who cares? Freddy storms at Mark and Danny, ready to kill them both, but they flee the cabin and out into the camp. He chases them for a good few minutes before cornering Danny. Mark comes in, leaps on Freddy's back, and they all fight for a bit. Freddy bucks them off and loses his hat in the process. It lands on Danny's stomach as she lies on the ground beneath Freddy. He raises his claws. Danny grabs the hat and uses it to shield her face, and just as his blades are about to rip her apart, she's shaken awake by Mark. How the hell did Mark get out of the dream? I set an alarm just in case we needed it. Danny's out of breath, nearly run down from adrenaline. She looks down and almost pisses her pants at what she sees. In Danny's lap is Freddy Krueger's fedora. Gus essentially locks the entire camp down in his efforts to cover up May's death. He's sequestered any potential witnesses together and is using the counselors to try and keep things in line. They're starting to object to all the horrible cover-up shit going on. Gus intimidates the hell out of them and does what he does best. He lies. He tells them that the families have been called and arrangements made with them all financially, but in reality, he's sitting on a pile of dead bodies in the camp freezer. Gus decides to take a stroll in the woods. He swigs from a small bottle of vodka and pulls out a cigarette. As he puffs away, he hatches a plan to tell his lawyers. Damn kids, should have never left him in charge. He knows his bulldog lawyer will have a field day with these chumps. He won't have to worry about Chet, former addict, overall degenerate, might as well have flight risk tattooed on his face. Gus starts to laugh out loud, an obnoxious rattle that gets louder and louder until Jason comes swinging around a tree and hits Gus with a catastrophic left hook. Gus looks up after a rough landing. His nose is broken and he's missing teeth. His face and mouth are so fucked up that words are no longer possible. Jason then proceeds to slam Gus's face into tree after tree after tree after tree. He then tosses what's left of Gus aside and returns back into the shadows of the woods. We cut back to Mark and Danny hatching a plan. If we can get the hat out of the dream, we can get him out too. Danny will go in, lure Freddy, and whenever he gets close, she'll grab him and freak the fuck out. And when Mark sees her going crazy in her sleep, he'll wake her up and bam, Freddy's in the real world. And then what? Danny pulls out a towel wrapped up like a tube. Inside are a bunch of sharp knives she stole from the cafeteria kitchen. You stick the son of a bitch like a pin cushion. Outside the cabin and toward the tree line of the woods steps Jason into the campgrounds. Jason sees two counselors and begins to pursue them as they escape for a romantic tryst. They disappear into a tool shed and discuss how they have to keep their relationship a secret. The door to the shed flies open. The lovers both scream in absolute terror at the monster standing before them. He sees a sledgehammer on the wall and yanks it down. With his other hand, he grabs the boyfriend and throws him out of the shed. Jason takes a large rake and uses it to seal the door shut. He then lines up the boyfriend and whacks his head like a croquet ball. He drags the body away and removes the rake from the shed door. The girl quits screaming and slowly emerges. Then we get a POV shot of the sledgehammer swinging into the camera. Mark and Danny make their way to the unfinished auditorium. They slip inside the building just in time to avoid Jason lurking around outside. They're all completely oblivious to each other. Mark and Danny start their plan. In the dream, he finally shows up and they begin a sort of chess match of words for a bit until Freddy reveals to her he knows what she's up to. He says it won't work. He'll kill her before her little buddy can wake her up. Freddy then moves around like smoke, in and out of the shadows so fast that Danny can barely keep up. In an instant, he appears right behind her and kicks her dead in the back, sending her straight to the ground. She turns over and looks up at Freddy.
I want my hat back, you little bitch.
He lunges at Danny, and she quickly rolls out of reach. Freddy lands on the ground, and she reaches over and snatches the back of his sweater. But Freddy fizzles away too fast this time. Danny tries to hide. Freddy stalks her, thinking that she's inside of a hallway closet. Danny's hand shoots out from beneath a table and grabs Freddy around his ankle. This time it works. Freddy's all of a sudden standing there in the auditorium. He looks around the place and sees Danny scurrying away in the shadows. From behind Freddy comes an insane scream, and Mark sails through the air. He plunges two huge knives into Freddy's upper back. He drops down and sticks Freddy 2 more times, once in the rib cage and another in the thigh before darting out of sight. Danny comes out of nowhere with her own blade, sticking 2 into Freddy, one in the chest and the other in the abdomen. Freddy's absolutely absolutely enraged at this point. Mark and Danny realize they fucked up, so they dip out of there. Freddy chases after them, of course, all of the knives still stuck in his body. They pour out into the campgrounds. Jason steps into view and lays eyes on the kids with Freddy on their tail. Who the fuck is that? Jason takes one look at the kids, then gives a slow head turn towards Freddy. Freddy tries to talk to Jason at first. He asks who or what he is, and when Jason doesn't answer, Freddy begins to assume that Jason's after the kids too.
You leave these brats to me now. They're my little piggies.
Jason takes big swipes at Freddy with a sledgehammer, but Freddy is agile enough to dodge him. Fred gets a few swipes in on Jason as they go around, causing that same sort of dark, viscous looking blood to flow out, much like we got in the real Freddy vs. Jason. I guess we will keep something from the 2003 movie after all. Jason catches Freddy's arm on the next swipe and tosses Freddy through the window of an empty cabin. Freddy stands up. When his vision straightens out, he looks up just in time to see Jason's hammer swinging into his chest. He smashes into the wall and a bunch of crap falls down onto his head and body. Jason takes a hop and swings straight for Freddy's head, but he's able to dodge the sledge at the last second. The hammer slams through the wall and gets stuck on a stud as Jason tries to yank it out. Freddy leaps up and starts to rip the shit out of Jason with his claws. Jason lets go of the hammer and absorbs a few more swipes before pulling out his buck knife and sticking it right in Freddy's cheek. Freddy screams and stumbles back, and then he slowly pulls the knife out of his cheek before Jason runs and tackles him through the wall and down to the ground outside. Freddy gets the upper hand on the landing. He stabs Jason a few times with the buck knife before getting it stuck in Jason's waterlogged neck. Freddy then pulls out 2 of the 4 kitchen blades and uses them on Jason. The fight carries on and ends up behind the tool shed where there's a large pile of chopped wood and a tattered old wood cutting axe buried into a stump. Jason throws Freddy towards the stump. Freddy gets up and tries to pull the axe out, but it's like Excalibur at this point. Jason turns around and pulls the axe from the stump with ease. Freddy rushes Jason from behind and plunges another of the kitchen knives into Jason's neck. He jumps up and pulls out the last knife from his body and squares up, ready to go.
Why won't you die, you giant fucker?
Jason swings big with the axe and Freddy quickly hits the X button and evades. He springs back and stomps all his weight onto Jason's knee, knocking him off balance into a partial kneel. Freddy then takes the remaining kitchen knife and uppercuts it into Jason's chin, knocking his mask off. Jason twitches and writhes a bit before slowly pulling the knife from his throat. Once the blade is completely out, he chucks it at Freddy, who ducks out of the way. He looks at the knife and then back to Jason as he puts his mask back on.
Who the fuck are you, Sandy fucking Koufax?
Fred's buying time now. He trips over his own feet and falls forward, catching himself with both outstretched arms. Jason quickly chops off Freddy's unclawed hand. Freddy goes berserk. Jason stands and watches as Freddy panics and eventually runs off into the dark. When Freddy gets a good distance away, he slips into a seemingly vacant cabin. He then notices 10 of the camp counselors huddled in the shadows. Freddy unleashes a furious storm on the counselors, killing each of them one by one. Now here's where we'll tweak the lore just a little bit. In this version of Freddy vs. Jason, whenever Freddy kills someone in the waking world, he takes their soul and it gives him a bit more energy, size, and strength. Think of each kill as a sort of super mushroom. By the time Freddy's done, he's big and burly like Freddy in Wes Craven's New Nightmare. The hand he lost grows back. It's a gnarly, clubbed up version like the one we see in The Dream Child. The fact that all those counselors were hiding points to exactly what the rest of the camp is doing. Mark and Danny are hiding too. Danny suggests that they trap them and blow them up. The camp has exposed gas lines all over. Mark and Danny lure them to the giant unfinished rec center. As they continue to mess each other up, Mark kills the power from afar. Danny uses a wrench to bust open one of the exposed lines, cause a leak that fills the building. She runs away toward Mark. She says to throw the switch. When the power comes on, it causes a massive explosion that sends both Freddy and Jason flying into the woods. Danny and Mark escape with the rest of the kids as Camp Crystal Lake essentially burns to the ground, but in the end the cops will find evidence of every dead body aside from Freddy and Jason. Credits roll, but we're not done yet. Jason trudges through the woods. His breathing is heavy and he's still flowing blood from multiple wounds. Jason drops to his knees and slumps forward, and just then we see Freddy stumble out of the brush from the other direction. He's glaring at Jason, but he's hesitant to attack. His light's about to go out too. The two horror giants start towards each other for one last fight, but both Freddy and Jason collapse, and for a good while the two monsters lay dead just feet from each other. From the distance we notice a car approaching. We see that it's a hearse. Out steps a tall man from the Phantasm series. He's He scans the bodies of the dead villains back and forth and then gives a look straight into the camera with a demented smirk.
Not dead yet.
The tall man turns to the hearse and snaps his fingers twice. A trove of his little minions pour out, systematically lead Freddy and Jason into the back of the hearse. They all climb in after them and shut the door. Tall man takes his place at the driver's seat and they leave the woods with Freddy and Jason in tow. The credits roll again. Just when you think the movie is finally over, fade into Mark smoking a cigarette in his bedroom. The door swings open. It's his father. His dad asks him how long he's had this stinky habit. He tells him ever since the murders. His dad can't help but empathize. He tells him to keep it to a minimum and don't let his mother find out. Mark takes one more big drag and then snuffs out the cigarette and throws it in his trash can. He picks up a comic book and starts reading. Suddenly the garbage catches fire, fills the room with thick smoke. Mark coughs violently as he dumps a glass of water on the fire. All the smoke continues to flow and he continues to cough. Pretty soon he's gasping for air, and as he does this he starts to suck in all of the filthy smoke. His face swells purple as he gurgles spit. Just as Mark doubles over, gasping for dear life, the shape of a body grows from the middle of his bed. Freddy cuts a hole in Mark's sheets and then steps into the bedroom.
Cigarettes are bad for you, Mark, but they don't got shit on me.
Freddy plunges his claws into Mark's bulbous neck. Blood and smoke flow out like a gory volcano. Up the street, a few houses, Danny shoots awake. She saw it all, but maybe it was just a dream. She throws on her shoes and shuffles downstairs, and when Danny opens the front door, standing not more than 3 feet in front of her is Jason Voorhees. He chases her through the first floor, then she eventually makes her way upstairs and barricades her bedroom door. We cut to outside in the front yard. We hear screaming coming from inside the house, and then a body bursts through the upstairs window. It's Danny sailing down in slow motion. She braces for impact as the camera freezes with her just a few feet away, and that's our real ending. So that's one way to fix Freddy vs. Jason. I know there's a lot of rewrites that would undoubtedly be needed, but in the end I still believe that Freddy vs. Jason doesn't need to be so contrived just to make the damn thing work. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. Do you have any ideas on how to fix Freddy vs. Jason, or do you think it needs to be left alone completely? Leave your ideas in the comments below. Thanks again for sticking around, and until next time, stay safe out there.